Peel police are appealing for the public's help in finding the suspects involved in 5 separate shootings that left 3 people dead.
We know these devastating incidents weigh heavily on the victims' families who are enduring unimaginable loss.
Police saying they believe the 5 shootings, all in residential neighborhoods, were connected, with all 3 victims mistakenly targeted. Plus,
we have to get that message out that, stealing transit rides is not acceptable.
The TTC is cracking down on people who are hitching a ride for free, saying fare evaders are costing them more than $120 million a year. And
it's common practice for people to go out into the park and actually drink. I mean, we've all done it, right? Officially or unofficially.
Just how successful was the pilot program that saw alcohol being allowed in city parks? Well, the results are in ahead of a city council debate on whether to make it permanent. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Peel police are asking for the public's help in finding the suspects involved in a string of fatal shootings from last November. They're now saying those shootings are likely connected, and a person of interest could be key to their investigation. Patrick Swadden has the details.
5 separate shootings, 3 people dead, all between November 7th and 20th last year. Peel police now saying they believe they're all connected. The findings coming from the Project Midnight Task Force with Ontario Provincial Police.
We know these devastating incidents weigh heavily on the victims' families who are enduring unimaginable loss.
Victims like Jagtar and Harbhajan Sidhu, who were gunned down in their Caledon home on November 20th while visiting from India, and their daughter still recovering in hospital after being shot 13 times in the same incident. The Sidhu's son Gurdeep left to wonder why police visited their home 2 days before the shooting.
Why did they come before the incident? They must know something.
A connection between the previous 4 shootings and that fateful November 20th evening could suggest an answer. One of those shootings happening on November 15th near Royal Windsor Drive and Winston Churchill Boulevard in Mississauga. 2 suspects approached a business before shooting and killing 29-year-old Jagraj Singh. Police wouldn't say why they believe the shootings are connected, as it could compromise their investigation, but did add,
"We wish to emphasize that the 3 victims in the homicide were innocent and mistakenly targeted."
They're now asking for the public's help in locating suspects, the same suspects believed to be involved in the other incidents. On November 7th, police responded to a shooting near Cottrell Boulevard and Thorndale Road in Brampton. 2 suspects fled in a black Dodge Ram 1500. A similar incident happened on November 11th at Laurenville Drive and Elburn Markel Drive, also in Brampton. 2 suspects fired shots at a residence before fleeing in a burgundy Dodge Ram 1500 pickup. 3 nights later, a suspect shot at the same Brampton residence, fleeing in a late model silver Mazda 3 hatchback. No injuries were reported in any of those 3 shootings, but police say the same night, November 14th, a black Dodge Ram 2500 pickup was stolen, later used in the November 20th Caledon shooting.
Police would also like to speak to an individual who was in the area at the time of the vehicle theft who may have valuable information.
Peel police say these shootings are not connected to the recent extortion attempts in the region. They're asking anyone to reach out to their dedicated tip line or call Crime Stoppers anonymously. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
1 man is dead and another injured following a shooting in Mississauga early this morning.
On arrival, emergency services located 2 victims. Unfortunately, one of the victims did succumb to their injuries and was pronounced deceased at the scene.
The other victim was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The shooting happened just before 3 o'clock this morning in the area of Dixie Road and the Queensway East. So far, police haven't released any details about the victim or a suspect. The partner of slain Toronto Police Constable Jeffrey Northrup teared up on the stand today as she described the events that led to his death 3 years ago. Sergeant Lisa Forbes is testifying at the murder trial of Umar Zamir. Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the death of Constable Northrup. Northrup died in July of 2021 after he was run over by a car in an underground parking garage below City Hall. The court heard earlier this week that Northrup and Forbes were in plain clothes house when they arrived at the garage to investigate an unrelated stabbing call. They approached Zamir's SUV because he seemed to match the suspect description. Now, Forbes says she identified herself as a police officer and showed her badge, but Zamir didn't seem to register the information. Forbes says he eventually accelerated his car, hitting Northrop. The defense is arguing the officer's death was a tragic accident that resulted from a misunderstanding and fear. The Crown says the officer's death was a result of a series of choices made by Zamir over a few short moments. Well, beware fare evaders. The TTC says fare evasion has doubled in the last 5 years, costing them over $120 million a year. And as Tyler Cheese reports, the transit agency says it has no choice but to ramp up enforcement.
Fare evasion is costing the TTC millions of dollars every year.
We're looking at about $124 million that was lost in 2023 due to fare evasion, which is an all-time high for us. It's unacceptably high.
A study presented to the TTC's Audit and Risk Management Committee breaks down the numbers. The highest evasion rate occurs on streetcars at almost 30%. That's followed by buses at 13% and 6% at subway stations.
That doubling over the last 5 years is a major concern. It represents a big chunk of revenue.
At City Hall today, some councillors are reacting to the unexpected numbers.
We need to get better at fare enforcement. In a world where this council has decided to increase service levels, not increase fares, and we're shipping out 10% of our revenue to fare evasion, I would say it's time we get serious on that.
We do also need the use of force policy to be approved so that there can be a response when someone just ignores a ticket collector or a fare inspector and walks away.
The TTC says it's already ramping up fare enforcement with officers riding high-priority routes at busier times. It's also launched a new marketing campaign this week to promote fare compliance. But transit advocates say stricter enforcement isn't the way to go.
That's only going to result in violence and harm for the lowest income and most vulnerable people in our city.
She's calling on the TTC to find other solutions to make up for lost revenue.
We can be a bit more creative and make sure we're taking an evidence-based human rights approach. I know people are having this reaction because the number sounds big, but we have to think about what is the impact going to be on the most vulnerable people who cannot afford a $425 fine, and their lives could be ruined over it.
The TTC's Audit and Risk Management Committee has asked staff to return in May with a thorough action plan to address the problem. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto City Councillors voted overwhelmingly today in favor of a plan to convert city parking lots on prime land into new homes.
Motion 2 carries. The vote is 20-2.
City staff will begin to study whether up to 130 city parking lots can be converted into housing. Dozens of those lots are close to transit stations and could increase access to the TTC. A full report on what sites would work best for conversion is expected to come back to Council by the end of the year. Well, having a nice cold one in the park may soon become a reality. The results are in from last summer's pilot project allowing alcohol in parks, with city staff saying the program was a success and should be made permanent. Anam Khan has the story.
A promising report from the city that just might bring Toronto closer to legalizing the consumption of alcohol in parks.
It was well received by the community, and we're very excited about it.
The city presenting its findings on a 3-month pilot project last year that made drinking alcohol legal in 27 public parks. The report showed the pilot was met with more than 90% satisfaction from park visitors, with minimal increase in complaints. Chris Moyes is one of the city councillors who proposed the project.
I'm not surprised by the report. I think it's quite amazing that the public has the opportunity to go out into the parks, and hang out with their friends and their family. It's common practice for people to go out into the park and actually drink. I mean, we've all done it, right? Officially or unofficially.
But another councillor saying the report doesn't show the full picture.
But what it doesn't measure is the underlying implications of the liberalization of access to alcohol in our parks. And that basically would be underage drinking, mental wellness, addiction, alcoholism, and the problems that relate to that.
The report recommends the program become permanent and include one park in each ward, with certain conditions in place such as no drinking alcohol within 2 meters of playgrounds and wading pools. But residents we spoke to are still a bit divided.
It's probably a good thing that it's more available. People don't have to hide, and it kind of takes away if police were cracking down on it.
It's uncomfortable when you have young kids here with the level of drinking and partying that goes on, especially in the summer. I actually don't find the noise that bad, but I do find people litter, people go to the bathroom in our alleys.
The report is expected to be debated in council next Thursday, coming back to council in April for approval. Adam Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
And you are looking at a live shot of Toronto. Clear skies tonight, and it's a cold one. Currently sitting at -8 in the city. Let's go to Colette Kennedy now with a first check on your forecast. And Colette, the seasons seem to be getting all mixed up.
Yeah, it seems to be something like that, right? Winter wanted to be spring, now spring wants to be winter, or a little bit of a battle going on there. So we do have a snowstorm moving into the area on Friday, and there is a special weather statement from Environment Canada, and I'm going to show you kind of the accumulations and the timing with all of this, but you can expect that the roadways are going to be a little bit slower, quite likely, not so much for the morning, but for that afternoon and evening commute. Daytime highs, wow. Well, Windsor, you got above freezing. Chatham, Kent, just 2. And the rest, well, it was a cool day, especially with those northwesterly winds blowing. And finally, we see the squalls backing off, and yet just in time for the system to move in. So some light flurries becoming light snow in the morning hours in southwestern Ontario. Some flurries possible in the morning, but more so this is going to be light snow into the afternoon and intensifying into the evening, closer to the Golden Horseshoe. We'll carry on with that overnight, and then by early Saturday, it's already pushed on from us. General accumulations, 5 up to 10 centimeters, but I think there'll be areas with more than that, and when you come back, I'm going to fill you in on those details. But tonight, -9, and Calda with the snow, -2 the high tomorrow.
Right, thanks so much, Colette. The Ontario government announcing today it is investing close to $2 billion in home building. This includes money to support infrastructure like roads, sewer lines, and water pipes in new communities, with the goal of building at least 1.5 million new homes in the next 7 years. But what got the most reaction is what's off the table. As Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redicott reports, fourplexes is not part of the plan.
The Premier made his announcement in an under-construction subdivision. He was asked about the new Liberal Party bill to allow fourplexes in neighborhoods province-wide.
You go in the middle of communities and start putting up 4-story, 6-story, 8-story buildings, and right deep into the communities, there's going to be a lot of shouting and screaming. That's a massive mistake.
It puts an end to any questions about whether the PCs could adopt the fourplex policy, recommended by the government's own Housing Affordability Task Force.
It's off the table for us. We're going to build homes, single-dwelling homes, town homes. That's what we're going to focus on.
It brought on lots of reaction from opposition parties. The Liberals clarified this is not about 6 or 8-story buildings.
We've got a NIMBY Conservative government led by a NIMBY Premier. Anytime our leader, Bonnie Crombie, announces something, Doug Ford gets his back up.
The NDP reaction to the Premier's comments?
Frankly outrageous and actually deeply insulting. He's sending a message to Ontarians that if you can't afford a single-family detached home, you're not welcome in your community or your neighborhood.
But the housing minister says few people are even saying yes to the allowable 3 units per property at just $21,000. Plus, fourplexes do already have the go-ahead in some municipalities, including Toronto and Mississauga.
Those that have the ability to do it, I encourage them to do it. But I'm not going to micromanage from Queen's Park what they should be doing.
The Green Party leader says there's a reason people aren't converting to triplexes.
I would say the minister and the premier need to do some consulting with builders who have made it clear to me at least that because of land acquisition costs, you really need to have a fourplex or higher to make the finances work.
The housing minister projects today's new infrastructure money will make a bigger difference than fourplexes.
There are thousands of homes that can't be built across York Region. There are thousands of homes that can't be built in Niagara Region. It's because of sewer and water.
The head of Ontario's big city mayors says the money will help.
Well, first, I just want to say a huge thank you for the $1 billion. We are very excited to get our check.
The housing minister projects it will lead to not thousands, but millions of homes being built. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Richmond Hill.
Ottawa is walking away from a court battle with Ontario over an environmental impact assessment on the province's planned Highway 413. Now, the court case between the feds and province was sparked by a Supreme Court decision last year. It found Ottawa's environmental impact assessment was largely unconstitutional because it exceeded federal jurisdiction. The federal environment minister was asked about the case today, but said he was unable to comment. A joint filing in federal court says the two levels of government have agreed to set aside the assessment pending a judge's approval. Building Highway 413 was one of the Ford government's central promises in the 2022 re-election campaign. Welcome back. A stalled luxury condo project in Forest Hill is the latest example of the difficult building conditions many developers face, while highlighting a problem that experts say has been fueling the city's housing shortage. Angelina King has more.
This was the vision, a 4-story luxury condo with 8 units in Forest Hill. But 7 years after construction began, the project still looks like this, a fenced-off, unfinished building.
It's pretty awful, actually. I mean, every day I get up and look at this from all angles of my suite. I'd like it finished, built, and looking like a real house, or demolished, one or the other.
It was supposed to be the ideal project, demolishing a single-family home to make way for several units. The old home was purchased in 2015 by New Point Developments for $3.3 million and demolished 2 years later. But for the last 2 years, it's pretty much sat idle. As recently as January, it was on the market for almost $13 million, but it didn't sell. New Point wouldn't say if it plans to finish the condo, but the president did say it has been and remains important to the company. In a statement saying, the project has been affected by unforeseen delays as a result of the COVID crisis, along with continued construction cost escalations and fluctuating market conditions specific to mid-rise projects. It's just one example as developers across the GTA are battling the perfect storm.
With prices now being soft, with interest rates having risen, with issues around supply chain and labor force, so actually having people work on projects, this can pose real challenges.
Leaving some projects stalled or abandoned because developers simply can't afford to build them or find buyers. And it's not just small projects like New Points, even mega developments in prime locations like the one at Yonge and Bloor aren't spared. It was placed into receivership last year. And when this happens,
that affects obviously the housing stock that we have in the city.
City Councillor Josh Matlow says the city needs to do better to streamline the process for developers.
There are some boxes that city staff have to check off that may have no context with the actual application in front of them, but the developer is asked to wait 6 months to figure something out that may not necessarily have to happen anyway.
And as for the project in his ward,
this is not an acceptable situation.
But he says in a case like this, and at this stage, the city's hands are tied. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Heads up if you take the GO train. Starting tomorrow, Lakeshore West service will be temporarily suspended between West Harbour GO and Union Station for critical track work along the corridor. GO buses will replace train service at West Harbour, Aldershot, Burlington, Oakville, and Clarkson GO stations. And there will be no GO transit service at Appleby, Bronte, Port Credit, Long Branch, Mimico, and Exhibition stations. Regular service will resume on Monday. Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your extended forecast. And Colette, it's going to be a bit messy on the roads tomorrow.
And yeah, as I was talking about earlier in the show, that heads up for what's to come for tomorrow so you can plan ahead. If you do have weekend plans and you're traveling, you may want to just modify things a little bit, push it more into Saturday if you possibly can, because the incoming storm on Friday, the morning should be okay. It'll be a different story though into the afternoon and evening. And in fact, in the morning in southwestern Ontario, we'll actually see it beginning there. It does intensify for the GTA towards the afternoon and evening hours and carries on through the overnight. But hey, the weekend temps rebound a little bit. They're still going to be below seasonal, so I put cool in there, but they will rebound a bit. And then the beginning of next week, you'll see in the 5-day things will be warming up. So here's your timeline: morning hours, lighter stuff. It then begins to fill in into the afternoon. It's starting to come through the Golden Horseshoe and points to the north up towards Georgian Bay, and then carries on as we go through Friday night into early Saturday. This is 6 a.m. Still snowing in eastern Ontario, but everything else has moved on. We'll keep some of the clouds, probably some lighter flurries as well, and then we'll finally see the sun returning later in the day. So we get some improvement with our sky conditions on Saturday. And initially, there'll be some melting of the snow as well, because coming in at this time of year. But here gives you a range, an idea of those amounts of snowfall, 5 to 10 centimeters, but there may be that enhancement here as the tracking is still uncertain. As that moves through, if it's just a little bit south of these lower Great Lakes, that's when we're going to see locally more than 10. So 12, even 15 centimeters possible into the city, and the amounts 5 to around 8 centimeters, it seems, for southwestern Ontario. Overnight temperatures very cool in eastern Ontario. You're not faring too badly. I actually think you'll see the temperature drop. Winds are well below that and then start to come up towards the morning hours as the system will be approaching. -2 the high in Toronto, and then Saturday and Sunday you see it's cool. It's below seasonal, but it's better than it's been the last few days. And I'll leave you with that warm up coming for the beginning of next week. Kelda.
I like to see that. Thanks so much, Colette. Finally tonight, the Royal Ontario Museum is celebrating its 110th anniversary this week. Now, to celebrate, museum lovers can visit the ROM this weekend for free. The museum officially opened on March 19th, 1914. Today, it is home to 13 million artifacts. And this weekend, visitors will be able to see the exhibitions Death, Life's Greatest Mystery, which explores the death rites and ceremonies of different cultures, and Wildlife Photographer of the Year, which features 100 photos from the international competition. Doors will be open on Saturday and Sunday between 10 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.